Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Brecheen, your host. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report, our show. Our today's guest, I'm honored to have him on, and I met this gentleman 20 years ago. 25 years ago. He was coaching at Southern University, or I can't remember if I met Coach at Tulane first. I think it was Tulane, then Southern, and now he's been at Amant High School, the head football coach for many years. He'll tell you. We'll talk about the years. The years are just escaping me. Coach David Oliver, thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
I get confused about the time frame I met you, Coach, because I would go to Southern practice all the time and see you. You were the O-line coach at Southern with Pete Richardson, and then you were at Tulane. You were at Tulane first, right?
Yeah, I was at Tulane with a couple different coaches, with Tommy Bowden for a couple years, and then with Chris Elfo for 3 after that, so a total of 5. And then I also stayed at Southern for 5, actually working offensive coordinator and quarterback there. So, that was 10 years, and then you throw in 14. I think this next fall will be my 14th year at Santa Monica, and time flies. And I think you're right. I think I have known you almost the entire time I've been here.
Coach Oliver, I wrap my head around this, man, and I can't believe you've been there 14 years. It just blows my mind. You've been at Santa Monica 14 years. It's just that's crazy.
Yeah, it goes pretty fast. If you blink of an eye, you miss it. And, obviously it's easy to want to stay at a place like Santa Monica. They got great people. It's a great community. I love it. My wife works in the school. Both my kids, one graduated, a couple of years ago, and then I got a son who's a junior right now. They've both been in the Ascension School. So it's a great place to raise a family, and I really enjoy it here.
David, I got a lot of respect for you, man. I never got a chance to tell you this, but when the storm hit, what was it, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, it hit Ascension Parish bad and Baton Rouge. And obviously this year it hit Lake Charles. Prayers to everybody in Lake Charles and Alexandria. But your school, like many schools, it was lost, man. And I remember coming to see you the following, football season was coming up 2 months after the storm. It flooded the whole school, flooded all your facilities. And y'all working in this 800 square foot, I don't know, it might have been 500 square foot, 10 coaches, man. And I come visit you, and you're not even actually in the school, and y'all are just going at it, man. And you're there for those kids, and you didn't stay, you didn't leave. You stuck at it with it, and you were practicing at EA some practices. You were practicing wherever you could go. Those were crazy times, Coach.
It was. I think it was 2016, and that was, we had a great group of kids that year, and a lot of them ended up losing almost everything. I lost my house for 3 or 4 months, so it got rebuilt, and a lot of personal belongings. So, I knew how those kids suffered, and that kind of bonded us a little bit together. We just now, just this January of 2021, got in the last of the replacement pieces, the bumper plates in our weight room. So, it's everything's had to be completely redone from the ground up, and we went. Besides the 2016 season, we went to 17 and 18 seasons without a locker room. We were dressing out an old temporary trailer, and we finally got the locker room built, and then they got a little temporary weight room, and then now that's all. So now we're whole again. And I tell you what, I think it was overall good for our kids because it showed us that anything's possible when you put your mind to it and go after it. And I think we learned a lot from that.
Well, I got to mention this for people that are not from Gonzales, Coach. If people are listening to the show in Shreveport or Lake Charles or wherever you listen, Houma, Lafayette, when I played at high school football, one of my first games was on the road in 1988, Coach. 1988, I'm going to Santa Monica to play. And nobody told me about that cannon. And I was on defense, man. I was playing strong safety corner, a little hybrid position. And I was playing receiver, but I was playing corner mostly. And, man, I was coming off the field, and that cannon went off. And I was like, what blew up, man? That was loud. That's intimidating. That cannon every time y'all score. That's an intimidator.
Yeah, and, we're known for that. That Here Come the Boom is one of our big things, and the chants. And, I guess I just didn't realize being on the home side of what kind of a advantage that was until I'll tell you kind of a funny story is that, I didn't realize what kind of an impact that could have on you until, I guess it was 6 or 7 years ago. We drew Acadiana in the first round of the playoffs, and I think it was 2015. And that was the first time. We used to scrimmage them for years, but the scoreboard's not on, and it's just kind of a different environment. And so, anyways, to make a long story short, we went down there in the first round, and they play like a tornado siren every time that they score a touchdown. And needless to say, it dawned on me sometime around the third quarter after that tornado siren went off for the 6th or 7th time how devastating that can be to your psyche when you're just getting rolled up. And I was sitting there thinking, man, these guys are so low class. And then I was thinking, hold up, we do the same thing at our place,
I remember there was a student coach, Coach Oliver, on our staff. He wasn't much older than me. He was like 21 years old out of college. And I said, Coach, you didn't warn us about this cannon. He said, I didn't know they had a cannon either. I said, all right, man. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Coach, don't go anywhere. We're going to have more with Coach David Oliver, the head football coach for Amant High School. We're going to talk about his seniors when we come back. Later in the show, we're going to talk about his juniors, which one of those juniors is his son. But he's got some good seniors that I want to promote that need the exposure because of the coronavirus, because of the lack of scholarships. I want to get him on and promote his kids. We'll be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest today is a fine gentleman by the name of David Oliver, the head football coach at Amant High School in Ascension Parish. And, Coach, tell everybody before we start talking about your seniors, you come from the state of Colorado. You're a big Broncos fan.
I am, yeah. I grew up there, and, my dad was in the military, but, we got transferred there. I was 7 or 8 years old, and he got tenure there, and so I was able to go to high school there and college just up the road from Colorado Springs and Greeley, Colorado, at the University of Northern Colorado.
Never left, huh, since you came to Tulane. What was it about Louisiana that kept you here? I mean, you never left. When you got to Tulane, you stayed?
Yeah, I just, I wanted to come to the South because, just being a football guy my whole life, I knew how serious football on the West Coast is, growing up there in the Midwest. And, it's not near it's almost like a true extracurricular at some of these places, and, down here, it's almost like more of a way of life, like they don't have spring football in Colorado, and you don't have a chance to, see the kids anytime over a lot of those, athletic PE is not a thing that you have at the high school level. And at the college level, 50,000 is a huge, huge stadium. Like, I think CU Boulder is 50,000, and, it's just the fans base, the TV, the atmosphere. It's just different down south. So I knew I wanted to try to get down south, and I didn't know Louisiana would be my, I guess, destiny. But, when you start getting on that job circuit and lurking around and work your way, you kind of go where the jobs take you. And it took me here, and I do enjoy Louisiana. I got to tell you that. And now I'm to the point where I think I tipped the scale. I just recently turned 50, and, you say I've been here 25 years in the state of Louisiana. I just tipped the scale, so I guess I could say I'm Southern now because I'm more than half my life I've spent in Louisiana.
David, thanks for joining us in the 50 Club, man. Appreciate you getting there. I turned 50 in June, so we're pretty close in age. When I hit 50, I said, okay, all righty. But look, before we get into your seniors, tell me how big of a fan are you of the Broncos? And they're not doing too great. John Elway's still involved. The head coach, I don't know if he's going to stay there too long. But what's the future of the Broncos with Drew Lock at quarterback? What do you think?
Well, I had a chance to watch a bunch of their games, and I just tell you, I'm not real sure. There's times where he looks pretty good, and there's, times where he's kind of struggling. But I will say this is, if you go back to and I guess maybe this has changed, but I remember when I was a kid or a younger man, I should say, that Bill Parcells said it took 30 starts to really evaluate a quarterback. And, I know that Drew Lock just, he had 5 games as he was on injured reserve for most of his rookie year, and then started the last 5 games and showed some promise. And then, early this season, he got injured and missed a few games. So, I think he's played 17 games or 17 starts, and one of those starts he missed most of the game. He got hurt against Pittsburgh pretty early in the game. So, I think if he could cut down mistakes and come together with that young group of, seems like, that Cortland Sutton was hurt this year, which is a big receiver, but, Noah Fant looks good. This Jerry Jeudy looks like he has a chance to be pretty decent. They got some, the Hamler, the second-round pick, so it looks like they might have some pieces around him. So, I think they give him another year and see if he turns out. And, if not, I guess they'll have to go to seems like the 18th guy since Peyton Manning was in there.
Yeah, and then what are your thoughts? I know you're an O-line guy by trade. You teach. I tell people all the time, Coach Oliver is one of the best O-line coaches in Louisiana in high school football. It's what you coached in college. But what you think of Cushenberry for the Broncos at center? What do you think?
Man, old Ascension Parish guy, even though he's an old Griffin over there.
Right.
But, I didn't, watch him extremely close. I saw some of those games, but I did see that, the head coach, Vic Fangio, really was impressed with his development. At the end of the year, they kind of have a presser, and I caught that. And then he was talking about, Cushenberry and that how he thought he was the most improved player that they had on the team from the week 1 to, the week 16, and that he really played his best football as far as recognizing the fronts and, putting the team in the right place and executing his assignments. So seems like he's got a bright future there.
Let's hope that Missouri boy, Drew Lock, doesn't become the next Jamarcus Russell or Jeff George. I'll take a Dan Fouts level, huh, Coach?
Oh, man, I'm telling you, if he turns out, we got a chance to be okay. If he does, I think all the eggs are in his basket. So we'll see. I guess, they're getting Don Elway kind of stepped away from the general manager spot in the talent evaluation and moved up to some other kind of vice presidential role. Yeah. And so they're going to hire a GM that's going to have full say over personnel. So I guess we'll find out what they think of Drew Lock pretty quick here once they name that guy and ease into the draft,
Coach Oliver, I got an old name for you, old Bronco name. I know you know this. You're in my age group. If he can just be a Craig Morton quarterback, we'll take that, right?
Oh, man, that was the quarterback that took us the Orange Crush, the original.
Right. I remember that.
Broncos.
Gradishar, remember Gradishar? Remember Gradishar?
Yeah, Randy Gradishar was the linebacker, and John Keno was the fullback, and they played the Cowboys in the Super Bowl down here in New Orleans, and obviously they lost 4 straight before they started winning some of those, but that was the first when the Denver started to get pretty good, and that's when they had the Orange Crush defense, and they beat the Raiders. That was a big rivalry back then because Oakland was so good, and there was a big controversial in the AFC Championship game, but of course that's way before replay. But there was a big controversial play that about a fumble by Oakland that ended up sealing the game for Denver. So that's what I always tell people. As a Bronco fan, your 2 favorite teams are Denver and whoever plays the Raiders. So I'm okay with that,
Yeah, and then came Elway and Steve Atwater. We're going to take a break, Coach, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your seniors, and then we'll take a break and then talk about your young juniors. We want to promote Sandoval High School. We'll be right back. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You're listening to Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest is the head football coach at Sandoval High School, Coach David Oliver, who's now a transplant. He's a Louisianian from Colorado. And speaking of the Oakland Raiders, Kenny Stabler. Speaking of a unique person, and Casper and all the Cliff Branch, all those guys they weren't well liked back in the day. Jack Tatum, all those guys. So they were the bad boys. I can't blame you for not liking the Raiders, Coach, growing up. But look, Lester Hayes was another one. But look, your team, you've got some good seniors, Coach. And you've got some good players in the senior group that I've watched. And I'm going to start naming them off. And then when I'm done, I'll ask you about some of the guys for college. Tyler was a good player for you as a DN, Tyler LaGrange, and Caleb Rock, O-lineman, Ty Bell, receiver, Evan Bourgeois, safety, Aiden Bourne impressed me as a D tackle for you. All these are seniors. Marty Jameson, a DB for you. Shaquan Long, corner. Justin Starks, running back. Reggie Sims, Justin Starks played receiver. Jacob Mccaskill, a big 6'5", 270 tackle, a good-looking kid. Sam McCorkle, linebacker, and there were some other seniors, but that was a really good senior group, Coach, that you had this year.
Yeah, and they did a great job for us. I guess this, we, like you said, we went through the flood in 2016, and just dealing with some of the things that everyone had to deal with this fall with the COVID-19. I was very proud of this group of seniors for the way they battled to have a season and kept the team together. And I know everyone feels the same way, that we're glad and grateful that we got football in and that these kids had a chance to compete and got a little reward and everything that they worked for. But a lot of these guys are just typical Gator players is what we call them, guys that continue to work and prepare and get better each year. And then their senior year is the icing on the cake, so to speak. Where they have a chance to play their best football. And some of these guys didn't play a whole bunch as juniors, but ended up being starters as seniors. And, those are the guys that we feel like makes our program special. Every team has, 2 or 3 stars that are good enough to maybe start as sophomores, at 5A ball. But really, we're kind of built on I guess we call them the other guys, but the Gator players, the guys that, come in, play on freshman team, and then play on the JV team as, sophomores. And then, as juniors, they kind of are role players, maybe rotational players or special teams players, and then, take a key role as seniors. And a lot of those guys did that. And, I just, a couple stand out to me. You mentioned, Jacob Mccaskill, who, came in and, he's got size 17 feet. He's just his best football is ahead of him. And, he just got more and more coordinated and the muscle memory and trained, that offensive lineman, you just kind of almost train those guys. And, I got a call from, he's going this weekend on a recruiting trip to Delta State. And, so he's doing that kind of visit thing. And I think that's going to end up being a pretty good place for him to go and develop. And, from where he started to where he came, I just am extremely proud of the work he put in and the effort that he has. And I think if that's where he ends up going, somebody's going to get a real good football player that's going to go there and do a great job in the classroom and the weight room, and they're going to get 2 or 3 years of him as a starter, which, as a college coach, we always thought, I never had a chance to be at a Power 5 school where you had guys turning pro early or anything like that, but at a mid-major, not to, at like a place like Tulane or a place like even a 1AA like Southern or Southeast Missouri State where I was, we always felt like if you could get a guy in, redshirt him, get a couple years as a backup and get 2 years as a starter out of him, that was a huge win from a, recruiting standpoint. You graduate them and you develop them, and that was a huge positive if you could do that. And I think he's going to provide that for somebody. He may commit to Delta State, I don't know, but I mean that's wherever he goes, he's going to make someone happy. I think Marty Jameson, I'd like to point out Marty. Marty started the first 5 or 6 games his junior year, and we challenged him to play a little better than he was playing, and started playing another young player who's a baseball football kid, Lee Brecheen, who has an extremely bright future in both sports and has committed to ULL already for baseball after his sophomore year. So we put Lee in there and really challenged Marty to up his game. And, then the beginning of this year, Lee got injured a little bit, and, we had to rely on Marty, and he took that position and really improved and never gave us a reason to take him back out. He was named our all-district team, and I just, it's just really fun to when you challenge a guy and tell them you need to see better from them, and then they actually take that to heart and produce and do it. So I was extremely proud of the way he played this season and acquitted himself out there. I thought he played great football.
And then Ty Bell's a 6'3" receiver, 175, 180. Looks like he's 6'8". He's so long, and he hadn't played a lot of ball. Ty Bell could be a good player if somebody gets him, huh, Coach, as a receiver?
Yeah, another guy who I think his best football is ahead of him. He has worked extremely hard, and, he worked himself into the starting lineup. He's one of those guys we talked about. He came here, and I remember, the David Swacker, the longtime Sanoma coach before me, is now coaching at Galvez Middle School, and Ty went to Galvez Middle School, and so, Coach Swacker calls me and asks me, "Hey, tell me about that. How's that wideout doing?" I forget his name right now. I say, he said, the boy that he never caught a ball in middle school, not in practice, not in a game, not in a PE class.
Man.
I said, man. He said, I said, Ty Bell. He said, yeah, Ty Bell. He said, yeah, he didn't catch a ball in the entire middle school, even in PE class. And so he really came in. He worked on his hands. He worked on his route running. And I tell you, he didn't have tremendous stats this year, but he caught like 20 passes and was a varsity starter and caught 2 or 3 touchdowns. Had a touchdown reception against East Ascension, which is our huge rival, to put us up 7-0 in that game. And he's 6'3", and he's probably 180, 185. And if somebody gets on him, I think he's going to continue to improve. And I was extremely proud of the way he played. He earned a role, and the team respected him for it. 2
other athletes for you, Coach. They could go junior college, D3, D2. Reggie Sims, really tough, stocky running back for you, 5'9", 200-pound kid, and also Justin Starks, a couple of guys that, are way under the radar. Might can get a small school opportunity, maybe junior college, right, Coach, for these 2 guys?
Yeah, I actually talked to Reggie yesterday, and Reggie's plans is to go to Southeastern and walk on over there and just kind of see how, he's unsure right now of what exactly, it entails to be a Division I type football player, and, the workload it takes. A lot of people have some misconceptions about how your day is structured. And,
right.
So we've had some talks about that, and he's not sure whether he's going to love that style of a day. And, I tried to be as honest as I was. Most of these places have, they have breakfast, mandatory breakfast check, and they keep you there. And then you got 2 or 3 classes, and then you have some sort of football related activity, whether that's
tutoring,
actual practice in season, or weightlifting in the off season. Then you have some sort of study table and tutoring, and then at the end of the night you might have 1 free hour a day where that you can kind of have some freedom to yourself, and then it's go to sleep, start everything else again the next day. And they check to make sure you're in class, and they you know what I mean?
Yeah. And look, I tell people all the time, Coach, and I don't mean to interrupt before I get ADD, but it's a 17, 18-hour day. They think, I'm going to Baylor, man. I'm going to Texas or LSU. Well, yeah, this is not a 4-hour day, off practice and you just go to walk-ons or something and get a hamburger, It's like you said.
Yeah,
it's 7 in the morning to maybe 10 at night? Sometimes.
At least 7 to 7. At least solid 12 hours, and maybe a little more than that. On most days. And but yeah, it's a grind. And what people also don't realize is, people always say, well, you want these kids to stay close to home and this and that. But I found out that it really doesn't make a huge difference for these people. How far they are away from home, because they still have the same amount of free time that they normally would. In other words, just
right.
because you're an hour away from home doesn't mean that you're going to have 2 free hours to drive home and eat all the time. It's just, you have the same time off. You got spring break and you got Christmas break and, a little bit of the summer if you're not in summer school. Other than that, they keep you busy and active and motivated. So, Reggie was not sure that he would love that kind of lifestyle, but he also wants to play football and is going to give it a try for a year. So we'll see how that works out. And if, it turns out that that's the kind of routine that he likes, then I think he could be very successful,
Yeah, Coach.
Justin.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Coach. Justin.
I think, and you mentioned Justin Stokes, who was a wideout for us, who was, very productive both of the last couple of years. And, Justin is, I think he's probably going to have to be a guy that goes the junior college route. And, I think that if he does that, I think he could end up being a very good college wideout. He, got a little bit behind in his schoolwork from, being, a lot of these kids. I mean, it's not just him, but a lot of them with
right.
this online school. I don't think a lot of them, started off real well. And he was in that boat of guys, and he's recovering nicely. But I think that if he goes there and has a good couple years or a good year, that he could pop out of there. And he certainly down the stretch for us, I thought was our best. He was a starter for 2 years, and it was him. And we had a couple good ones the year before. Obviously with Javen Aguilar signed at Nicholls State, and then Austin Bascom signed at Southern Utah. So we had a couple of FCS guys, and then he was the definite number 3 guy, in that unit last year. And so, this year he popped up, and he was the kind of guy that was leading that unit, and he did a great job for us, and I think he has a bright future. And down the stretch, I think there was nobody in our district that was playing better than he was.
Coach, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about your juniors. One of them is your son, Tanner Oliver, who's going to be a junior this coming year, and also other juniors. And then I want to ask you about the Colorado Buffaloes. Can Carl Durrell turn it around to the old days, right? The McCartney days. Can that happen? Is it possible? The old Eric Benamy days, the the late Salanasi quarterback. These guys in their 30s, Coach, are saying, who are these guys, right? Who are these guys?
No doubt.
But when we come back, Alfred Williams, All-American DN from Texas at Colorado. They had great players.
I know him well. I was in college at the same time, about an hour east of Boulder, right there. And
Convanis McGee, another All-American DN. They were bringing home the hardware back in the day. Cordell Stewart, Darian Hagan.
No, they were.
We'll be back in a minute. We're going to have more with Coach David Oliver from Santa High School. We'll be right back. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. Our guest is head football coach David Oliver from Santa High School in Ascension Parish. If you're not from Baton Rouge and you're listening to the show in North Louisiana or Texas, wherever you're listening, or Denver, Colorado, Talking about the Buffaloes before we get to Coach's juniors. Man, what a time with Coach McCartney. It was like a 10-year domination period. He even had Rashawn Salam, the Heisman Trophy winner. He passed away recently. God bless him. And then we had Salanasi, the late quarterback, who was actually the father of Coach McCartney's daughter. Their son or daughter. They had a kid. And then there was Alfred Williams, Convanis McGee. McCartney was going to Louisiana getting Dalton Simmons. He was getting Cordell Stewart. They signed whoever they wanted in California, Coach, when you were going to college at this time. I mean, they were going into California getting like Rashawn Salam at running back, Darian Hagan. I mean, they were on top of the world. What do you think of the Buffaloes now? Carl Durrell's a veteran coach. Can they get that mystique back? Can they get it back?
Well, I hope so, because, I got to see it start almost from scratch, when Bill McCartney took over there, they had lost to Nebraska. They had never beat them. I think it was like 25 straight years they had lost. And, the first couple years of the Bill McCartney era, Colorado they were really struggling even under Bill McCartney. And that's back when they, a lot of people don't remember this, but that's back when they looked almost just like UCLA. They had the powder blue jerseys. Mm-hmm. They had the gold helmet with the powder blue Buffaloes on the side. And then, so they went to the triple option and won a Freedom Bowl one year, and then during that year they played Nebraska in Boulder, and I'll never forget it. They warmed up in the powder blue stuff, and then they went in the locker room and they changed and came out in all black.
I love those jerseys. Those are nice jerseys.
And that's when they, and then they actually that day they beat Nebraska, and it took a couple trick plays or something, which was the first time they had ever beat Nebraska. And, that kind of sparked them up and started a rivalry. And of course they went and beat Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and I think it was 1990. They won the national title. They split it with, I think it was
Michigan?
Georgia Tech.
Michigan?
If that sounds right.
Yeah, it is Georgia Tech. It was Georgia Tech. You're right.
I think Georgia Tech won one of the polls, kind of like LSU and USC. One of the polls, one won the other. But so I've seen them through the years. They caught kind of that magic back when they brought Gary Barnett back. who was the guy who was on, Bill McCartney's staff. And, he went and did some great things at Northwestern, and they got him back. And then they had another good run there. And I thought Rick Neuheisel had his moments. And, I think they thought they were doing the right thing by trying to get the guy out of Boise, Dan Hawkins. And for whatever reason, that just wasn't a very good, match. Everyone thought it was going to be the great one. Like it was widely lauded when they hired him. Like, what a gift! This is going to be a perfect match, and that just never quite worked out. And then, they had the former tight end John Embry was the coach, and they kind of slipped a little bit. And I thought they were going to come back with Mike McIntyre, whose dad coached at Vanderbilt, was a big Southern guy, and he had them up to, they played, they won 10 games one year, and then they just kind of slipped off. So I don't know. Carl Jarrell's the old guy that was, part of CU when Neuheisel was the coach, and certainly has a lot of experience. And I had a chance to watch them this year in the bowl game. They were at one time 4-0, and then squandered a lead against I can't remember who in the regular season finale. I think Stanford. They were up 24-7, ended up losing 27-24, and then I watched them in the Tom Herman Swan Song against Texas in whatever bowl that was, and they did not look too good in that bowl game there. So, but I do think that with his staff and some of the guys have been there a little while. The former receiver there that I can't hardly say his name, Shiverini, Darren.
Yeah, Shinavari.
Yes, yeah. So he's running the offense, and I thought they looked pretty sharp. But I think they got a chance, and I just sometimes I sit and wonder how good the Pac-12 is for Colorado. I just wonder if they maybe should have stayed in the Big 12 where they were. But I guess we'll find out.
Nebraska's probably saying that too. Like, man, should we have moved to the Big 10? It just doesn't fit Nebraska, I don't think either. They've been stumbling since they joined the Big 10. But Colorado, man, I would love that mystique back. I really would. But Coach, I want to mention this before we talk about your juniors. Speaking of the Buffaloes, and I follow recruiting, I follow what comes out of Colorado. You're from Colorado, but there's always 5 big-time offensive guard tackles coming out of Colorado every year. And you know this, you build your team around the trenches and a quarterback. But they've got to sign those 5 O-linemen every year out of Colorado. All 5 go everywhere. Like they go to Nebraska. They still get them, though, even though they're down. But how good would Colorado be if they keep those O-linemen in state?
Oh, I think they'd be pretty big. You think they'd be excellent. I mean, there's a few from, like, my era that, with, Tony Baselli, who I saw as a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, was a Boulder Fairview guy. So you can't get any closer than Boulder Fairview to high school to Colorado University. It's right there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You could throw a rock from one to the other, and that guy, he ended up going to Southern Cal and
Jacksonville.
Obviously had a great pro career. But there's been a number of guys like that. And at one point, what made it worse, the coach at Boulder Fairview was Bill McCartney's son. So it has kind of been strange how we've let those guys get away, and there's not a ton of talent year to year in Colorado, but like you said, there's usually some good line talent. You got a little that, farm country boy type thing going on like they have in Nebraska. And, it's, if they can keep those kids home, I think they definitely have a chance. And, but a lot of the people around there, California recruits there pretty good. And, they got to, at certain times, Wyoming actually does a fairly decent job recruiting Colorado.
And look, LSU signed that tight end, Cole Taylor, the shoe man. The shoe guy that's going to be – if he don't do anything at LSU, he's going to remember for that shoe at Florida this year. But Cole Taylor, he's a Colorado kid, 6'6", 250, true freshman, and LSU went over there and got him. And, by the way, they had 4 tight ends sign out of Colorado this year, Coach, in the early signing period. All 4 of them, All-Americans, none of them going to Colorado. Yeah,
man, I'm telling you. And that, you look at the Ed McCaffrey and, his crew, Ed McCaffrey, who's now the head coach at my alma mater, University of Northern Colorado.
Wow.
Former Bronco great. Both his sons are tremendous athletes. And then, Christian who's with the Panthers, went to Stanford. And then the younger brother, Ed McCaffrey was a pro athlete. His wife was an Olympic athlete, so they got good DNA. And then the son was, last I heard, I think he's at Nebraska now, but he signed at Michigan initially and transferred to Nebraska and started a few games. So, those are exactly the kind of guys that Colorado needs to start getting to stay wearing that black and gold, and I think they would be more than successful.
Love that gold and black, Coach. I loved them, man, when they were winning in the 90s. They were unbelievable. People were upset when Cordell Stewart left Louisiana. That was a big one here, but he had that Hail Mary throw at Michigan, which I still remember to this day. And, Coach, getting to your junior group of kids, you've got some good-looking kids coming back. I mean, we're not going to go into the sophomores, but the juniors, led by your son, Tanner Oliver, who's 6'5". You said he's 6'6", 6'7". You're 6'5", but what do you think of your young son, Tanner Oliver? I mean, he's a tight end for you. I'm sure you're teaching him how to block. You're an O-line guy. But what do you think of Tanner, your son, if you were just given a coaching detail to where he's at right now?
Well, I think he's the kind of guy that, I think his best football is going to end up being ahead of him. He's, he's still he plays a lot of basketball too. So he's still got to kind of get that strength aspect developed up. He's a long rangey kid, but I do think he can have a chance to be pretty okay for us as the tight end spot. And, I just know that he's going to ending up being a pretty large kid who moves around pretty good. For right now, I think he's about, 210, 215. And, he creates some matchup problems on the edge. And, I tell you that I think that class is pretty good, and besides Tanner, I think you'll probably hear about, for sure, our quarterback, Cole Poirier.
Yeah.
Who's 6'3", he's probably 180, 185. His dad played at Nichols back in the day. And, Cole's a kid that has started for us he rotated every other series as a sophomore with another guy for about 8 games and then took over the starting. So, even in that year, he threw for 1,200 yards and, about 15 touchdowns. And then this year we ended up playing 6 regular season games. And, he ended up throwing for like 1,700 yards this year with 18 touchdowns. So
he's a good-looking kid, Coach. He's a good-looking kid. Yeah. He's got a cannon arm.
Plus he's our punter and he's our field goal kicker and our kickoff guy. So he wears a lot of hats and does a lot for us. So, people are going to be excited about him. And, he really spends a lot of time in the summer working on his game. He's a student of the game. So, I definitely think that, those are sure a couple guys you're going to hear about. And I know you're going to ask me about a few more.
Yeah, let me throw these out so you don't have to be pressured to remember them. Dylan Carpenter, 6'4", 2. You got a lot of height coming up. 6'4", 235, junior DN. Good-looking kid, jersey number 91. Leighton Smart, a tough O lineman for you, 6'1", 245, junior. Jax Melanson, a lot of Melançons, like you said, have played at Santa Ma. His dad played there. 6'2", 185, linebacker, still growing. Jaquantez Paul, good-looking running back for you that could play receiver, number 34. I like him a lot, Coach, a junior. At least 6 foot tall, maybe a little bigger than that. And then you got Lee Amadi, who's a safety for you. And then, like you said, your quarterback, Cole. And that's not all the kids, but that's a good group to build from, to build with to go into next year, huh, Coach?
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of those guys have played a lot of football for us, you mentioned Juantez Paul, who, he lines up at receiver, lines up for running back. And I just really I expect his senior year to be unbelievable, barring injury, because he does a great job. He does a great job in the return game. He does a great job rushing the football from a running back standpoint. I love the way he can motion out of the backfield and match up with certain people as a wide receiver. So he's scored. He's caught touchdowns out of the backfield. He's caught them at receiver, and he's run some. So I think, I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Jack Melanson and Lee Amade, which are going to be kind of our linebacker duo. We mentioned Lee earlier, who's a football, baseball guy who's real thick and is committed to ULL on a baseball scholarship. And so he is, he's going to play next to Jax. And then, Jax is a very instinctive, kind of see things before they happen type linebacker.
Reads good. Huh?
Yeah, he really understands where he's supposed to fit. That's the big, I guess, buzzword on defense is run fits and so forth. And he really knows how. He puts me in the frame of mind of probably one of the most instinctive kids, if not the most instinctive kid I ever coached, was this Cade Roddy a few years back, who was just unbelievable at that kind of stuff and would make play after play. So I'm excited for Jack. Blake Smart started a huge part of the season at guard, and I think he's going to really blossom as a senior. He's a lot of our kids, and statewide, I'm sure this was an issue, but he really could have benefited a ton from the weight work in the off season, and a lot of our guys didn't get that, and I'm sure this is the same thing that people are seeing across the state. But as football went on, he wore down and was not as effective and efficient as he was at the beginning of the year. And during that COVID, you could work out some, but you had to have that space, and so you really couldn't test yourself really in the weight room because you had to do the amount of weight that you could safely do without a spot. And so
you have to wing it, huh? You have to wing it.
Yeah. So I think with a full off season, you can really see him, come together. A guy that, you didn't mention, Trayshawn Dunn can fly. He can really run. He's got good track speed. And, he plays corner for us. And, I think he's going to have an impact. You mentioned Dylan Carpenter, and, a couple of sophomores just to mention that I think are really going to have a chance is Dylan's just a sophomore, so he'll be a junior in the fall, and he's 6'4", 235, and every time I see him, it looks like he puts on a pound of muscle. He really works out. He's got a home gym. He works out with us, and, he's really starting to grow into, that defensive line position. I think he has a huge, bright future. He also plays some basketball, does a good job. And then we have an offensive lineman who's about 6'3", and he's probably 255, 260, named Mason Vaughn. And, he moved into our school district right at the beginning of this season. He had started as a freshman at Ascension Christian, a little private school on the other side of town here, and transferred over here and, he actually lives in my neighborhood. But anyhow, he really came on as a young guy, played the guard spot opposite of, he played center. He would rotate in at center at the center spot, and he would also rotate in with Leighton Smart at that guard spot as the year progressed. So, he really has a lot of upside. And I think that of our sophomores, I might be leaving a few out of this conversation like I always do, but I think those guys will definitely have a chance to be on the recruiting radar.
I got a guy, too, that I like, Coach. He might develop into something. You like him, too. Noah Luke at receiver coming back. He's a junior. Noah is a good-looking player.
Man. Yeah, he was very him and Remy Rizzuto were our inside slot guys. And, then, of course, we had Ty Bell that you mentioned earlier, and we talked about Justin Stokes. But, those guys did a great job in the slot. One of them caught 40 balls, one of them caught 39 balls, and they were within a handful of yards of each other. They were both, around 500 yards, and they both had 4 or 5 receiving touchdowns. And, of course, Noah's coming back, and he just, he's so steady and solid in there. I mean, he knows where to go. And, I tell you what I really do like about him is, he doesn't miss plays. If he has a chance to make one, he goes and makes it, and, he doesn't leave anything out there on the field. He's not a drop guy. If he can get his hands on it, he usually pulls it down and makes a play. So, I mean, I'm excited for him coming back, and, he can move around a little bit too. He's a two-sport guy. And, so yeah, I'm excited about 2021, and the future. I think we got a chance to, be real good. Anytime you got a quarterback, I think, what was that Bud Grant said, that you need a good quarterback, a good wife, and a good dog. Those are the 3 keys.
I love that. Bud Grant was one of my favorite coaches. People don't remember unless you're probably in the 40 group, but
so, that says the world right there. So I know that we got a real good quarterback who, we've had a nice run of very good players at quarterback, and he reminds me probably the most of Hayden Mallory, that really did a great job for us. And he's got a little running. He ran for 400 or 500 yards this year too. So I think it's all going to start with him, and then we're going to build it inside out from there. And I like where we're at as a football program, and we've So 9 out of the last 10 years we made the playoffs. And the year before last we finished 33rd. We finished 5-5 and didn't get in, but so we've been pretty steady. So I'm excited to see if we can qualify for the playoffs. And I will say this for the record: we played Ponchatoula in the playoffs this year, and I just want it to be on the record that we have been known for years, even before my time, for the mosquitoes at the pit and how bad they are on the visitor sideline, because the visitor sideline is right up to the woods. And I would just like everyone to know that we are the second worst place for mosquitoes in Louisiana, because nobody can touch the mosquitoes on the visitor sideline at Ponchatoula.
They let you know you were there. You're on their property. You were there.
Yes,
it's kind of like when you go fishing, David. You fish any growing up in the boat?
Oh, not in the boat. No. In Colorado, you can pretty much walk up to anywhere you want to fish.
In Louisiana, even if you're on land, if you go out in the spring and the summer, if you don't have that mosquito repellent, you're done. Like you look like somebody ran over you with a truck. When you get done fishing, it's like red spots for like covering you. You look like an apple, when you're done.
Yeah.
But, final thoughts. I want to get you, because I know that you keep up with your Broncos. Who would you like to see them draft? If you could, and I'll give you time to even think about it, but if the Denver Broncos could draft a position and a player, who would you like to see them end up with?
I tell you, just staying locally, I would love, because it really showed up down the stretch watching them play. From they had the guy they signed from Jacksonville. I'm trying to say the Poirier.
Yeah.
And, they struggled at corner. He got suspended, and I think his suspension is going to last a couple games of next year. So, I think if they could, they picked 9th. So I think if a top flight, if they decide they're going with Drew Lock and not moving up, then I think that their main need needs to be a top flight corner. And, I think that Patrick Surtain, whose dad was a New Orleans guy. And, when I was coaching at Tulane, their family owned that dry cleaners right across the street from Tulane.
Wow.
And,
wow.
So, I had a chance to know the father, and then, obviously this is his son. He's got a little local connection. So I'd love to see him, get a player of that type caliber at corner. I think they need to address that spot.
They might end up with this guy, Paulson Adebo from Stanford. He's a junior, 6'2", 190, 4'4". And then there's this kid from Florida State. The dad, Asante Samuel. So they're going to be in position to get them, and I think Jamar Chase will be around. That's going to be tough to choose from. If Jamar Chase, if no one's picked him, what would you do, corner or take Jamar?
Oh, that's tough after seeing how Jamar played. But, they've got so much invested in receivers. They got a first-round tight end in this Noah Fant. They got a first-round receiver in Judy, a second-round receiver in Hamler that are all second-year players or lower. Some of them are first-year guys who were rookies. And then, they spent a second-round pick, like the 40th pick on that Cortland Sutton the year before, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. So I almost would say corner, but, boy, that would be a pickle for him to be in right there.
And then if Najee Harris is around, do you take Najee Harris or Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State? They're going to have some options.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I mean, who do you go with? Chuba Hubbard, who can catch the ball and do it all, or you go with the big Derrick Henry clone and Najee Harris?
Man,
Najee would do great in Colorado, huh, Coach?
Yeah, the way that Derrick Henry played down the stretch, I think I'd want the Derrick Henry clone.
Yeah, the 6'2", 235, 4'4" guy. So they're going
to just pump you.
And watch them draft a quarterback. After everything we said, watch them take another quarterback. You never know. You never know. I mean, because the BYU kid, he's going to be around to take. I think they'll have a shot to draft that Brigham Young quarterback. What do you think of him?
I haven't seen him play a whole bunch. I did watch the game when they played Coastal Carolina, which was a good game. But I didn't. I don't have a strong opinion on him. I know that the pundits here seem to have liked him. So it's kind of crazy. I was kind of fired up. The Denver paper was thinking that the Detroit Lions might move on
from Stafford. Stafford.
Yeah, and then then the Denver paper had a stat that made me. So they said Matt Stafford is quarterback in a game against the team that ended up the season with a winning record. So they have not when they've necessarily played them, but at the end of the season, there's been 91 times that he has been the starting quarterback against the team that finished with a winning record.
Wow.
And he's 8-83, I think. He won 8 of those games. So that made me think that now maybe that's some organization, or maybe he's just not winning the big games. So
yeah.
I don't know what to think. So.
Well, yeah, well, if they get Stafford, he'd be a great addition. But here's another thing that could happen. Kyle Trask from Florida could be around in the second round. That'd be a good pickup, second round from Florida. Big quarterback, can run and throw. And then the quarterback from Brigham Young is Zach Wilson. It'd be crazy if those two guys drop in the second round and Denver could get them in the second or third round, because you know how this is. These guys drop all the time. And another good corner is Eric Stokes from Georgia. He's a junior coming out as an underclassman, 6'2", 190, 4'4", 40. So there's a few corners in the draft to take for the Broncos, and they got to get used to that stadium. Like you said, from Colorado, it's different, huh? It's different. The weather. Speaking of the weather in Louisiana, tell everybody about the Colorado. I mean, it's a different hemisphere over there, man. In Mile High School.
It is, and you deal with the cold and the snow in the fall, and then the altitude is also you're the Mile High City, 5,280 feet, and they post that all over the place. For years, they swore that a football traveled farther from a kicker and punter's foot and in Colorado than anywhere else, and I think they finally talked that into existence. I've never seen any, specific studies that prove that, but why, they talked about it enough that I think it is an issue. But I do think that it's a challenge for teams from sea level or something to go. I grew up in Colorado Springs, which we mentioned, and that's the home of the Olympic Training Center. So a lot of the Olympic athletes go up there for that specific reason and do train at altitude. So they go down to sea level. It's almost like they're supercharged a little bit from the amount of oxygen they get and stuff like that. So that might be something that's a challenge,
Coach, I got to throw this out. This is just for kicks to throw it out. LSU beat Florida in Gainesville. You saw it with that 57-yard field goal by Cade York. The Florida kicker, remember, missed a 51-yarder at the end. He's so upset, he's going pro as a junior kicker. Have you ever seen that? A junior kicker is going pro, Evan McPherson from Florida. So Evan McPherson is around for the 7th round as a junior kicker if you want a starting kicker. And they're not going to take a kicker in the first 5 rounds, but it looks like LSU just kind of broke that program, huh, Coach?
Yeah, that had to be a pretty devastating loss for the old Gators. I got to tell you that.
Because after that, they lost to Alabama, and then they got embarrassed against Texas. They got embarrassed in the bowl game. Oklahoma could have scored 100 on them, in the bowl game. But, Coach, look, man, thank you for being with us today. I'm glad we could promote you and your school, and I hope you're coaching high school ball, man, another 20 years.
Good catching up, man. I appreciate you calling.
All right, don't hang up yet. Everybody go to lafootballmagazine.com to catch out our articles. You can catch articles that Jace Legern's written, quotes from me from watching the kids play statewide in Louisiana. We'll see you Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.